Right then, good evening. I'm just going to do a little short video for you on some burnishing and blending techniques because everybody's individual and depends on what kind of effect that you're looking for. So tonight I'm just going to use a couple of ways of doing it. So I'm going to use a Polychromos, which is an oil core pencil, and then I'm using for the wax core, I'm going to use the luminance. These are my two sort of main sets, and I've just introduced. I also have the Pablo, which I use a few for. That's quite a soft pencil, and I've just introduced the Derwent light fast set, which is another oil. Well, it's the Derwent oil core, and they're supposed to have very good light fast thingy. So what I'm going to do is eventually I shall do adding more pencil brands to this. So what we're going to do is we're going to do burnishing with a pencil, which is what I do mostly. Now I usually use the and you'll probably hear me talk about it, doing a white pencil, and I usually use the luminance because it's a little bit more opaque, whereas Polychromos, they're known really for a little bit being a bit more transparent, whereas luminance are a little bit more opaque. So it seems to be the best white, but you can use any white pencil you want. Or if you don't want to use a white pencil, you can actually use one of the colours that you've got, or another coloured pencil to do the burnishing or blending with the pencil. The next thing is a Derwent burnisher. Now you can get these on their own, or you can get them in a set. It's an extremely hard sort of encased sort of, I don't know what's in it, but it's encased in wood, and it's very hard, and it takes a long time to wear down. I don't use mine, I'll be honest with you, but I'll show you what the effects are, maybe what you're looking for. Then the other one that I've got here is an actual, for this, the last one here, this is a Caran d'Ache pencil blender. So this is a little bit more waxy, but it's colourless again, so we'll see how it works. I mean, it should work very well with Caran d'Ache, obviously, the luminance, because it is made by Caran d'Ache. I don't know what it might not work so well with the Polychromos. Then the other one that we're going to do is we're going to use the pencil blend Zest It, which blends both oil and wax pencils as well. It's an odorless mineral spirit. It does smell a little bit. I'm not keen on the smell, but it does have some good effects. So if you can stand the smell, then fine. And what you need for that, you can apply it with either a brush, or you could even apply it with a cotton wool bud. Sorry about that. I've now actually got some spilt on my paper, so that's not going to be of a great help. Get that off. Right then, so what I've picked is I've got a light and a dark pencil in the Polychromos and a light and a dark pencil in the luminance. Okay, so in the Polychromos we're using a light phthalo green and a phthalo green. Okay, and in the luminance we are using a cobalt green and a dark English green. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do, we've drawn some squares out here. So I've put a title across the top, and then I've put the name of the pencil, and then I've got 4 squares. There are other ways of blending and burnishing as well, but for tonight I'm just going to be showing you these few. So I'm going to start first of all. I'm holding the pencil quite far back because I do work with light layers. Now for a lot of these things to work, I mean, like especially with this one, with the pencil, the more layers you have down, the better. So you'll often see me working, and I'll have, you know, quite a few layers down before I start to burnish or blend with another pencil, and then you can add back on top, and then right at the end I'll give it a really good burnish. But the more layers you've got, the better. So I'm going to start off, I'm just going to, on the side, I'm just going to put a light layer of this colour down, like that. So you can see the tooth of the paper coming through there. Okay. I'm going to move on to this square. So I'm going to do all of these 4 squares here. And then down here as well. Okay, so it's sort of lightish pressure, and I'm using the side of the pencil. You'll see me stop and turn it, and that's because I want to try and keep the point of the pencil. Okay, so that is the light phthalo green. So now what I'm going to do is right next to that one, I'm going to lay down this dark phthalo green. You can use any colours for this. I like, you know, to experiment, you're better off using a light and a dark colour. So putting this, a light layer of this one down. Same here. So repeat this process, and then we're going to repeat it again with the luminance pencils. If you hold your pencil further back as well, it stops you from putting too much pressure going through your pencils, and it gives you a more even coverage. So now we're going to do this with the luminance. So this is the cobalt green. Okay. These are a bit of a softer cord pencil, they're waxy. Whereas the polychromos are a little bit harder. The polychromos I find are absolutely fantastic for detail. And I often do most of my pieces actually have both pencils in them. I find that the luminance are great for layering and blending. And then obviously I like the polychromos to add details in. But they do work very well together, both pencils. Okay, so this now is the darker English. This is the dark English green. Okay. And you'll hear the different sounds that each pencil makes as well when you're putting it down. This is a waxier one. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, because we need to have layers for it to work, for any of these processes to work, we need to have some layers down. So I'm going to go back in the same kind of pressure. I'm just going back over this. So you can see the colour now is building up a little bit. Go across, you know, into the, so you cross over on that side of the pencil. Okay. Same on this one. Just a couple of, just lightish layers over it a couple of times. Again, I'm not putting on too much pressure. Turning the point of the pencil so I can keep it pointy for quite a while. Okay. Now you can do, that's a shading stroke that way, or what you can do is you can actually do small circular if you want to. So now I'm going over with the dark phthalo green. I'm going back into that one there. So we've got quite a few. So you're blending into that colour as well. Okay, into there, and then back again, a couple of layers. So we've got some layers to work on. Back and forth, you can do little circular strokes, depending on what you're doing in the piece that you're using this method in. Okay. I'll move on to the luminance again. The cobalt green. Into this one. You can see each time you add a layer, you are filling in a little bit more of the tooth of the paper. So, you know, I mean, it depends on what you're doing, really. I mean, sometimes I can have, well, I lose count of how many layers, to be honest, and so on a lot of the work. But if you don't want to use as many layers, then there are, you know, some of these methods may be helpful to yourself if you don't want to use quite as many layers. because depending on the pressure that you put on the pencil as well, or through the pencil, depends as well on it, you know, it can affect your wrists. I mean, I suffer with arthritis, so I mean, touch wood, luckily it's mainly in my left side, but I am ambidextrous, so I'm lucky, I suppose, that way. But I'm hoping, you know, that I can, but I can feel it. If I've been doing a full day of drawing, then I can feel it in my wrist. It can be quite uncomfortable. Right then, so we've got a couple of layers down. Get my broom and get rid of some of the, that's it. Okay. So we're now going to have a look at these different methods. So the first one is burnishing with a pencil. So I normally use a white luminance. So I've got a couple of them here. I've got them in pencil extenders because they're very short. It's really at the end is this one. So, you know, they're sort of coming to their end of life. It's sort of like that size. So it's hard to hold the pencil. So the pencil extenders are absolutely brilliant for this. Okay, so when I'm doing this, I don't necessarily always have a sharp point. You can see this one's been worn a little bit. So I always have, with the whites, I always tend to have a couple of them on hand, because otherwise you'll be stopping and sharpening every 2 minutes. Right then, so we're going to use a white pencil. You don't have to use a white pencil. You could use one of the pencils that you've used, or a different colour pencil, whatever. So you could use those. It's just the same method, but I tend to use a white. So I'm going to do this with a little bit more pressure than what I did when I put the, so it's a bit more than the lighter pressure. It's sort of a mid to a mid pressure. I'm doing circular motions, and you can see already that it is starting to smooth the paper a little bit there. Okay. And as I say, this method, the more layers you have, the better. So I tend to use this sort of consistently through the piece that I'm doing. I obviously don't put a lot of pressure on the early stages, and as I'm building it up, it's only towards the end where I put a little bit more pressure on. So that's filled in quite a bit of the tooth of the paper, but you can also notice it's lightened the colour because obviously you've put a white film over there. So I'll tell you what, we'll do this one first and then I'll put the extra colour back on. So now we're going to go over the luminance and see if it's any different with the luminance. It seems to be about the same. I'm just doing small circular motions. It's blending it quite nicely. It's filling that tooth in. And again, it's lightened the colours, but it's blended them in really nicely as well. This may be a little bit patchier than that one, but I think it's just, again, that's just down to the number of layers. If we had more layers, it'd probably be a little bit smoother. So I'm going to come back to my pencils. So I've done a couple of layers. I've done some burnishing or blending because I want to get rid of the tooth of the paper and I want this to look quite smooth with colour. So then I want to go back in because I want to get rid of that lightish colour and I want to sort of darken it back up to the actual colour that I'm looking for. I'm using circular motion, quite light, so that's that one. And it seems to be taking the colour, okay. Smooth, blending nicely, and it looks a heck of a lot smoother than, so you could do some more layers and then you can re-burnish and probably add some more layers as well. But that looks nice and blended and smooth, okay. So now let's try with the luminance. So I'm going back over again with this cobalt green. It's more circular motion, so it's putting the saturation back into the colour. It's accepting it fairly well, yeah. Okay, I'm going to go to the dark English green. That's going on lovely, that one. Going in there and blending nicely. So I'm just going back over that one a little bit more there. Okay. Okay. So that's nice. You can see it's blended, it's smooth, and it's accepted colour back on top. Okay. Right, the second method. So this now is is going to be using a burnisher, pencil burnisher. As I say, I don't use them, and this is one I've just got lying around for a long time, and it is extremely hard wearing. And I think you've got to put quite a bit of pressure on this. So to me, this kills the tooth. And I think we're going to find, like I found before, that when we burnish with this, it's going to be very hard to put colour back over the top, but we'll give it a go. Okay, so I'm doing circular motions. You see, it's doing it very patchy. It's not very smooth. It's sort of killing the tooth of the paper, but it's making it quite blotchy, which is what I thought. So it's quite light there in the middle, and then you've got some dark blotches on there. Okay. Let's see what's like on the luminance. Again, very, very patchy. It seems to be, to me, it's sort of pushed pigment there, or it's lifted the pigment, or there's a lot of pigment sat there in that particular tooth of the paper, and that is very patchy, so it's not going to give you a smooth finish at all. And you can feel it, it's sort of really killing the tooth of the paper. I'm not happy with that one at all, but as I say, if it's the effect that you're looking for, that's fine. So I'll pull that to one side. Let's see if it accepts colour back on top. No, not very well. And again, when you put it on, it's hard to get it, especially with the polychromos. It's not going on very well, and it's quite hard to get it to adhere, and it's not smooth at all. Yes, it's coming out quite patchy. So you've got little patches again all over. So that's not a very smooth one. It's not as smooth as this here. So let's try it with the luminance. It's going back over okay, and it's filling in some of that patchiness, but it's still not. You're going to find it very hard to get a smoother finish with that. I think it's worked better on that than the polychromos overall, but I think that the reason for that is because these are a softer pencil. Wax core pencils, which are the majority on the market, are softer than the polychromos. Oil-based pencils are a bit harder. Not my favourite, but again, as you say, it depends on what you want to do. Now then, zest it. Now this is supposed to be an odorless. It's supposed to smell of citrus. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit into the lid. Okay. So it's an odorless mineral spirit. Oh, it stinks. So you can use a brush, or you can use a cotton bud. It's up to you. Okay. Hello. Hiya. Yes, it is. As long as it's not too long, you're fine. Right. Right, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen, being disturbed by the phone. Right then, so we're going back to this zest it. So I'm going to put my brush in. Now, the key to this is you don't need the brush soaking wet. So make sure you take all the excess off and have a towel, paper towel handy, because you want a semi-dry brush. Okay, and then I'm just gently moving over the paper. I'm not rubbing it particularly hard, so it's not going to damage the tooth of the paper. and I'm just literally, so it's like paint really, you're sort of using a brush like a paintbrush. Now it should take a couple of minutes to dry, so we'll move on to this luminance. The other thing with this is you can see it's sort of fetching the colours back to life as well. It's giving them quite a vibrant feel, so they're a bit darker, a bit brighter. And you can see you're not having to put any pressure on this paper, and it's just nicely smoothing all of the colour out. Okay, I've got a little bit of the thing there going on. So now we're just going to leave it a couple of minutes, and we'll come back to that. I just want to make sure it's completely dry before we try and add any more colour onto it. Okay, so I'll tip that back into there. Okay, close that lid. Make sure you clean your brush out thoroughly. Right, so the last one we're going to go on to is the Caran d'Ache blender pencil. Now this has got it's got a waxy feel to it. It's not as hard as the burnishing pencil. I'm not particularly keen because it's a bit harder than normal pencils. So you're going to be using it in a similar way to that, except that it's colourless. So you won't get the film that you get over when you use a white pencil. But what I found is it does damage the tooth of the paper. You won't get as many layers back on top as what you will do if you're using a pencil. Okay, so we'll start there. I'm using small circular motions. So it's just blending it a little bit, but as I say, I think it's damaging the tooth a little bit, so you probably wouldn't get as many layers on. So again, it depends on how many layers you want to get and what sort of finish you want to your piece as well. But some people do like to see the grain of the paper on their finished piece, and some people don't. So now I'm coming down here to the luminance. So it's blending it. I mean, the luminance it should work really well with, because it is by Caran d'Ache, who make the luminance pencils. So, and it is blending them a lot easier than it blended the polychromos. I've got to say that. Okay. Okay, so take that off. Right then, so we'll go back to here. It's fairly dry now. So we'll see about putting some more colour back on here. That's putting the colour straight back on, very nice and easy, and it's going into a bit more of the tooth of the paper. Okay, and you've got that vibrancy there with the colour. And what you can do with this is you just keep layering up, and you can add another layer of solvent, let it dry, and go back in and add more layers. So you can add, it's more or less unlimited, the amount of layers and solvent you can use on there, and you will get more of a paint effect to your piece. It'll be a lot smoother, blend all the colour, all the tooth of the paper in. So yes, it is another one of mine that I use, but I try to avoid it just for one reason, and that is the smell makes me a little bit nauseous, and I do get a headache with it. Some people are fine, but personally it gives me a headache, and it does make me a little bit nauseous, so I don't use it as often. This is my preferred method, so that would be my second, but I don't use it really that much. So now let's go with luminance and see how that, you see again, it's laying the colour back on top. Lovely. Nice depth of saturation of colour. It has covered most of that tooth of the paper. Oops. Oh, that's going on lovely. So it's very, it feels creamy putting it on top, and you can see the vibrancy of the colour. It's a heck of a lot more vibrant than any of the others. Okay, so that's the zested. So we did the blender, so let's see how the colour goes back on top. It's going on, but it's not as easy as you think. And you've got to put a little bit more pressure on there for it to go in. And you can hear it as well, it's quite scratchy. Okay. Now down here, let's try the luminance. So see, that's not going on there very. Oh, it's better now, yeah. Actually, it's going on quite creamy, better than the polychromos actually. It's a bit patchy though. Polychromos more than the luminance. But as I say, I don't think you're going to get as many layers of colour or pigment down with this method as what you will with this method. You get a lot more down with this. And this one is more or less unlimited. So you will get some more in there. So for me, this is the favourite one. And then that one, as I say, if I wasn't, if I didn't feel so nauseous and get a headache, then I would probably use this a lot more. But personally, this is the method I use more than anything. Never use that one, never. That one seems to work better with the luminance, but then again, I would expect that because it is made by Caran d'Ache. And I think these sort of tools work better with softer cord pencils. So waxier pencils are a lot softer than oil cord pencils. But you've got things like, let's have a think, right, you've got Pablo are soft, Derwent Colour Soft, they're really soft, and Prismacolors, which a lot of people use. So they will probably be okay with those sort of pencils. But for the polychromos and luminance, then I wouldn't sort of use them. I have used them occasionally, but if I need that really saturation of colour that I've got and I don't want to put a white film over it, but personally I just recommend I use this one here, and occasionally I use that one. So they're the two ones. You can also get, I haven't got any at the moment, I did have, but they've run out. You can get what looks like, it looks like a marker pen. It's clear, the nib's white, and it's got an alcohol based solution in it. Sometimes you can put it with odorless mineral spirits in it as well. And it's more like this, but in a pen. So you can use that as well. But as I say, mine have run out at the moment. And that's sort of on a par with the Zesty. So I have used them because obviously, because it's in a pen format, I don't get the smell so much. So I don't suffer with a headache as much. So if you do find that you get a little bit nauseous using that, then try the pen. You get them in a set. One's a broad nib and one's a fine nib. So, you know, try those. They probably work. They work the same sort of way as this. But as I say, you don't really get that powerful hit. I mean, I've had that open and I can feel it now. It's giving me a bit of a headache. And it lingers. The smell lingers. So that's what we've done now. And as I say, what I will do, I'll have a play around with the Light Fast and the Pablo and add them onto this, and then I can always come back and revisit and do it again, but with adding those two on as well. And what I'll do is I'll try and get some of the pens, the sort of blender pens that's like a marker pen as well, so you can see what effect they have as well. But for now, I've just shown you this little bit. So have a play with some colour. You don't have to use these colours. You can use any colours. If you get a light and a dark colour so you can see them blend. And just have a play and see what you feel comfortable with. And then, you know, when you come to do a piece, you use the method which you find is best for you. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching. And I'm sorry about the break in the transmission with the phone call. I'm hoping I stopped it in time, but we'll soon see. Okay then, well, thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.